Hello and welcome to Better Under Pressure. I'm Sara Milne, author of The Shed Method and founder of Coaching Impact. And in this podcast, I talk to leaders from all walks of life about being better under pressure and using pressure for better. I want to explore how we handle pressure in a world that is becoming more and more complex, the impact that pressure has on our ability to perform at our best, and what we do to be better under pressure.
That inner critical voice that we all have, it has a purpose to protect us from something, but it also can be very negative in terms of the impact that it can have on us. I call mine Not Good Enough Nora, but then I saw Not Good Enough Nora is my inner critic. What's the ideal voice that I want to have? Risk It Rachel. Not Good Enough Nora is always questioning whether I'm taking the right decisions. Am I good enough to tackle this? Do I need to check in with someone just to get their opinion? Risk It Rachel, she's super confident. She's got this. She knows that she's way more qualified than she needs to be. She knows that she's got this amazing expertise and she doesn't need to check in with anyone. She owns it and she goes for it. She's super confident. I even created a folder that's called Risk It Rachel, where I put things in when I'm thinking about what I could do to really put myself out there a bit more.
Today I'm talking to Edith Bardin, Global Insights Manager at Shell. The word global is very apt when referring to Edith. Born in Luxembourg and consequently speaking 5 languages, her 2 decades building global consumer insights expertise have taken her all sorts of places, including Northern Europe, the UK, Canada, and even Mauritius. She now is a worldwide authority on everything from decoding consumers' minds in retail, entertainment, and packaging, to embracing the evolving landscape of air travel and, most recently, e-mobility. In our conversation, Edith shares what she discovered about her efficiency at work after she'd had children, what doing a charity swim taught her about herself, and how it affected her growing up as an unexpected triplet. Edith, it's so lovely to have you on Better Under Pressure. Thank you so much for your time.
Oh, it's a pleasure. Thank you for having me, Sara.
Well, let's kick off. Let's dive straight into the conversation on pressure, as this podcast is all about that. Do you remember the first time you experienced pressure, Edith?
Yes, I think it's a very good question. I have a really long-term relationship with pressure. It goes back all the way back to my childhood. I'm a triplet, so I'm one of 5 children. I'm the youngest of the whole gang, and I think for me, from a very early age onwards, I've decided that for me to be seen in quite a big group of children, I needed to put myself out there. I needed to do something so that my parents or other adults might see me, because it's quite crowded around me. And so I always put a lot of pressure on myself to just do a little bit more, study a little bit harder, try to get just a few rewards or being recognized for something that I did better than someone else, just so that I get that connection with other people that I was craving so much from a very early age on. But what I also would say is what's really interesting about this kind of pressure, it's very different to the kind of pressure that I experience as an adult now. So I use it as a tool to kind of help me to progress, to do better, to achieve more. But it wasn't like a negative thing that would hold me back. It was always perceived as a positive thing. Okay, so what I absolutely loved about your bio when you sent it to me was that whole phrase, actually, I'm an accidental triplet. I thought, wow, that's so interesting. Just having the accidental bit put in there says so much, huh? And so when you were just talking there about the young girl pressure that you felt, I'm really intrigued at the fact that do you think it's the adult labeling that pressure as never saw it as a negative thing? Or do you think that always was the case for you, that actually, and again, I don't know how it showed up for you, and even if label's the right, if pressure's the right label for it, I don't know. But it sounds like it's an energy of some sort that you had when you were younger. When did it become, are you conscious of when it became pressure? Yeah, I actually, now that you're taking me back there, I think there was a couple of examples that came up. I think it served myself really well to a certain age, and then it became a bit too much. And a good example of this, going to university, getting a degree in business sciences, I continued to that same ambition. I always wanted to be the best in the class, the best in every subject. And obviously at some point it's not sustainable anymore, in particular when you join, very well-known, reputable universities with a lot of people who have amazing talents. You can't continue that journey constantly. And so what happened to me is that I continued to try to always stand out, to be the best. And at some point, you just kind of hit a wall, and you just can't continue to deliver that. And that is kind of when pressure gets too much. You start to really doubt yourself. I remember throwing books across the room saying, I can't do this anymore. I don't know what to do. And I remember people trying to help me and saying, look, do you know how amazing you are? You don't need to continue to study through the night. You can let go a little bit and you will still continue to achieve amazing results. But it was really hard for me to let go of that aspect, because I've trained all my life. I've been telling myself, in order to be the best, I have to work harder than anyone else. So even today, my adult life, I still continuously need to remind myself that it's not about all the hard work that I put in. There's a lot of other factors as well that contribute to the success that you might see in the business world. For instance, there's a lot of other things that are just as important as the work that you put in. But because I've kind of created that kind of narrative in my brain from such a really young age, is something that's really hard to then untangle as you go into your adult life.
It's that whole thing, isn't it, of something working for you so well, and then too much of it becomes the shadow of it. I mean, this is something that I have many conversations about, and with myself as well. About at what point do you realize that this striving is not serving you any longer?
I think there's a couple of things to this. The way that I love that I learned about this more is when I had a situation where I simply couldn't put in the same effort because I didn't have the choice. So a good example is, so I'm not only just an unexpected triplet, but as you know, I also got now twins and a toddler as well. And suddenly I had to prioritize differently in my life. I simply can't put in the same hours anymore. I simply can't dedicate the same amount of time to projects, to all kinds of things. And what I realized quickly, even when I was when I was pregnant with the twins, is actually achieved amazing business results when I had to really focus my mind on what matters and had to let everything else go. It was really about just achieving those big priorities, really making a difference where it matters. And, it's probably one of my most successful years from a business point of view was in situations like that, when I just simply didn't have a choice and had other things that I needed to be mindful of in my private life as well.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, it takes something bigger, doesn't it? Sometimes something that actually allows you to build the habit that you want in the end. Do you recognize the same sort of signs for pressure now then? Now you've got 3 children under 5.
Yeah.
And fun. You're working. That, high fives to you. But I think this is a rich conversation I'd quite like to have around pressure, actually, is that responsibility of young children, holding a job, being somebody that clearly is used to doing well. I mean, you speak 5 languages as well, Edith. Like, you're a high achiever. What I would say is a high achiever, and it sounds like that's really mattered to you. How do you manage all of that as a working mom and still feel good about what you're achieving?
I think it's a constant learning curve and a constant balance. I actually often think also about your shared method. So. One of the things I realized this year, after coming back from maternity leave, is I came in with the same mindset. I was like, I'm just going to achieve everything. I'm going to do everything. And obviously, at some point, you have to review and say, actually, maybe that's not the best idea. I need to find balance in my life. And so one of the key things, for instance, that I've introduced is having those moments of short breaks, going to the gym, for instance, having a half an hour run outside. And it's really served me, because actually I feel more refreshed. I feel more in control. I feel better about myself. And so actually when I then come back to my work, I'm actually, from my perspective, and probably from my employer's perspective, actually delivering better work than I was before. Because I learned how to balance my life a lot better.
Gosh, I mean, that's not easy either, is it? Like, because... This is often, I know I need to do something, but whether I do it or not is a whole other thing. So just talk us through, Edith, how you remind yourself to take that half an hour break to, you're in the middle of something. You've got this window of opportunity when you are without the children, you're working. How do you manage that? Talk me through what you've taught yourself to honor that.
So actually, if you don't mind, I'll tell you a little story, because I think what was really interesting for me, I knew I wanted to go back into exercising and kind of doing something that's good for me. I didn't really know where to start. And there was a little hook that helped me get started. And it was a actually a charity who, and a lot of charities do this. They kind of say, why don't you try and run every day this month? Or why don't you try and go swimming 8K in a month? And it's all for a good cause. You will feel better for yourself, but you're also raising money for a really good charity. And that's exactly what happened for me. So I saw this charity going, right, why don't you try and swim 8K in a month and also raise money for us? And so I did. I started going for swim. I was like, oh, this is quite hard. I'm really not that fit anymore, but I really enjoyed the feeling coming out of the swimming pool. And typical me being that over ambitious, as you know, instead of going 8K in a month, I ended up going 18K. I did 18K of swimming in a month. So that's me again trying to go, okay, now I need to rebalance that slightly because I can't spend my whole working week in a swimming pool. But just to show you, it was a hook that helped me to kind of, not only for myself, I did something for myself, but I also did something for someone else or an organization that is really important to me. And I think, for me, that was important because I often, as a mom, and I'm sure other people do the same, regardless whether they're moms or not, is that you're often motivated by something else, not just yourself. And we often put ourselves in the background. So it was a perfect combination for me to get myself to do something was, yes, I'm going to look after myself, but I'm also doing something positive for the world around me at the same time.
Yeah. And how did you do a regular timing for that? So let's just go to the discipline of what that means. What you're talking about there is that connection to a purpose beyond self-interest, which I absolutely agree with you, can really be the galvanizing force. And then you have to sort of think, well, so what makes that then into something you commit to?
So I think I then realized if I want to do it, and you're completely right, and I admire people, I have colleagues who can come into work, they do some work, and then at 11:30, they get up and they go to the gym or something like that. I'm not that kind of person. Once I'm sitting and I got my head into something, I look up and it's 6:00 and I don't know what happened to the day. So the way I deal with it is I actually volunteer to take the twins to nursery, which is the first kind of drop off, is an early drop off. So we've got an arrangement with the nursery that we can drop them off before 8 a.m. So I take them there. My husband takes our toddler to school a bit later, but that allows me then to go to the gym and the swimming pool, which is literally next to the nursery. And also I then use that time often when I'm, for instance, I now go to the gym as well to kind of develop, stamina, all that kind of thing. So if I go to the gym instead of the swimming pool, I use that time to educate myself. I might listen to a podcast or catching up on something at work. So I also feel I'm kind of maximizing the time that I have at the same time as well.
Yeah. And that's clearly worked for you because you've clocked up 18K for the charity. And so is that habit now what you do? Is that like set?
It is still fluid. It's still moving. So I'm still trying to continue to have that every other day in my life. But of course, there are days where it's simply not possible because there is a deadline looming or one of the kids is ill. But I've made it really a priority because I can just see the physical and mental benefits for myself. And therefore, also the work and the contribution to my family as well is much more positive because of it.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point you've just said there about the contribution to your family as well. Like it's, yes, it's fulfilling for you. And you to use my words, your shed feels in better shape. But then also what you're putting in on there, which I really love is, and then you're better for others when you feel in better shape.
Yeah, absolutely. And we always joke about that at home. Kids, the twins have just hit a terrible tooth, so they can really push buttons right now. And you can imagine after a long day at work, you then have to deal not with one but two trying to push buttons at the same time. And we always joke how if you have a bad day, you quickly show frustrations and much quicker than if you had like a balanced day and you're happy with the workload you achieved and happy with what you achieved for yourself. Then you're much more patient and kinder to those situations as well.
Yeah.
When our lives fill up with multiple responsibilities, it's so easy to bypass ourselves and bypass the activities that we know will ultimately provide us with the energy we need to turn up fully present to those activities and those people that matter. I've heard so many clients say what Edith has just said, that they become super efficient with their time and achieve more after having children than they did before. However, many also say, I bypass lunch to gain me more time, or in a throwaway comment say, I don't do enough exercise though. So how do we continue to fill ourselves up when our lives fill up with increasing responsibilities? Well, I think it's all about making it harder not to do it. Making it so easy that it's almost impossible not to. That's what I love about Edith's example of choosing to take the twins to the nursery because it's close to the gym. It's a great example of exactly what I mean. Taking the twins is already part of her routine. She's making it hard not to do the exercise because the gym is right next door. When we want to stick to habits that we know fuel us, we have to reduce as much effort as possible to make sure that we do them. Any choice we make depletes our energy, and when we have multiple responsibilities, we want to make as few energy-expensive choices as possible. So the key has to be to make the choices that we know will fuel us as easy as possible to do. I remember a piece of research that reinforces this. A group of people who wanted to exercise were divided into 3 groups. Group 1 was told they had to go to the gym 1 day a week. Group 2 was told to go to the gym sometime on a Wednesday. And the third group was told to go to the gym on a Wednesday at a specific time and do a set of specific exercises. Well, you won't be surprised to hear that of the first group, 29% completed the task. In group 2, 39%. And in the third group, that figure more than doubled to 91%. Creating a routine where we don't have to think about when, how, or where we're going to do it maximises our ability to adopt a new habit faster. Try to attach triggers to actions you already do with little effort. For example, every time you walk through the door, or whenever you check your emails, or in the 10 minutes before you go to bed, and so on.
How is pressure for you now? I mean, how would you describe pressure now for you in the life that you've designed? Edith?
Yeah, I mean, pressure is everywhere these days, but I think it's different. I think the clear thing for me is ever since having those 3 kids, I think pressure has massively shifted in the workplace. It's become much less of almost like this kind of looming, dooming thing that it can become, just because it's shifted in terms of maybe priorities as well. Even trying to get 3 young kids out of the door on time in the morning so that I can catch my train to get to work on time feels almost like more pressure sometimes than maybe a looming deadline at work or a request from a senior manager at work, just because it just has a different feeling to it and how you can manage it and handle it. At work, you can breathe. You can say, okay, let me have a think about it. How do I tackle this? Let me park a few other things if there's a priority. And it's much more like linear. And as I said, if you're frustrated, then you just go into a room and you sit by yourself and you kind of regroup. Whereas in a family situation, you just don't have that luxury to kind of say, stop everyone. They're not going to stop even if you ask them to, right? You have to just deal with it on the spot. And I find it therefore much more challenging, to be honest, because there's all the kind of tools that we have to cope with pressure. We don't necessarily have them in those family situations where you just have to deal with it. You can't just say, stop. You know, I've got one twin trying to climb on a tree. The other one is trying to cut his finger with a scissor. I can't just say, stop. They're not going to listen. I have to, in that situation, deal with a very difficult situation and have to decide on the spot which way I'm going to run and how, you know, and I always feel like I need to have more senses than I really have as well. You often have to kind of just have a gut feeling about, do I just let him play with that toilet roll? He's going to be fine, right? Or do you have to intervene? Like, is there 6 senses that you develop that are not maybe as necessary in a work context, in my opinion?
Yeah, and it feels like you're allowing the more sort of instinctive behavior, decisions, choices as a mum in that moment.
Absolutely.
Than potentially you would in another environment that involved a different sort of pressure. I'm so intrigued and spend quite a lot of time in conversations with people who have got full days and increasingly full days with, you know, stuff to do with family, stuff to do with work deadlines, stuff to, you know, with the environment being so challenging in so many ways. How do you make sure that you have enough energy at the end of a working day for those that you love?
It's a very, very good question. There's an element as well of enjoying those micro moments. I think that's something else that I really started to embrace more, is when you have that limited time together as a family, for instance, you consciously make the effort to really take it in, you know, put the phone away, put the laptop away, tell your mind as much as you can to kind of, all right, we're going to leave that until later. Don't worry about it for now, and just really take in those special moments that you have together. And that has worked really well for myself. And I could watch my kids all day long when they play nicely, to kind of how they play together, the three boys together, and how kind they are and how supportive they are of each other. And the twins really, like, they do silly things like trying to feed each other, or like all kinds of things, which are really, really cute. And you just kind of, if you get yourself to really be present in those moments, it really recharges your batteries really quickly as well.
Yeah. How do you do that?
It's a learning curve, I think. It's a lot of it is continuously trying to be better. I'm not saying at all that it's easy, and I have a lot of people in my life reminding myself to put that phone to the side. I'm way too much glued to social media, to my work, whatever it might be. But reminding each other, reminding yourself, and I said some days are easier than others, and sometimes it's about, if you work from home, it's about maybe switching off half an hour earlier before you pick up the kids. So you have that breathing time to let things go. And I actually really enjoy to go and pick them up, because the drive is slightly longer. And that means I'm just that lets me then switch off. Maybe there's a few things I'm thinking about in the car, but by the time I get to the nursery, my brain has kind of finished thinking about all of these different things that might be on my mind. And I can then walk in the room and fully embrace them when I pick them up.
Yeah. So you're really highlighting there this idea of just switching off time, even if it's in a journey, to just give yourself permission. It's interesting because there's so many, I sort of say tricks, but what I've learned through the work that I do is that there are no rules to this, but people need to work out what matters to them and how they manage to it. Like whether it's, stopping. I remember that I worked with a French guy once, and he thought and talked in French at home. And one of his pressure was speaking and operating in English in a very, very high level environment with a lot of responsibility. I mean, he was very fluent in English, but he was thinking most of the time in French. And so he decided that he would have a part of his journey on the way. It was quite a long journey. It was about an hour in the car, where he would stop listening to the radio in French and turn the radio on into English. And it was almost like this is the starting line now of what I now need to do. And these little, I've never forgotten that, because these little environmental factors can make such a difference, can't they, to our ability to make these choices.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And I would also relate to the languages is absolutely. So my first language is Luxembourgish, so it's a very small language that not many people speak. But
Luxembourgish, is that what it's called?
Yes,
Luxembourgish.
Well, yes, that's what we call it. Yeah. There is definitely Luxembourgish in the dictionary. I had to look it up because a lot of people pick up on it. But I when you really push me and I get frustrated and I kind of want to swear, I swear in Luxembourgish, so I feel a bit better for it. Okay. So then the mother tongue comes back,
Yeah.
So, but we've been so long now in the UK that English is kind of our first language. Language definitely has a part to play in all of this as well. I think I speak French to my husband as well, and I think depending on the emotions, French or English takes over, depending on where the conversation is going as well. So it's an interesting one. So
interesting. Yeah. Isn't that interesting about the role language plays in release, is what I'm hearing.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
Yeah. Fascinating. Good. So what would you say is the worst pressure you've ever been under, Edith?
Oh gosh, I think it's a tricky one, because certainly at work there are many moments of high pressure, but I wouldn't necessarily be able to single one out that is incredibly harder or more difficult than others. I certainly can think of an example when I moved to London basically after university, and I got my first job in a graduate scheme. And I think that's the first time that I really, really experienced pressure to a level that I hadn't experienced it before, because I walked in from Luxembourg, quite a small country, studied abroad, different locations, but nothing compares to London and the amazing pool of talent that walk together into a room, and the expectations from a company, and the new surroundings, the language, the new culture, everything, right? Everything just came together. And me coming in with my usual, I'm just going to work really hard and things are going to happen for me, I suddenly realized that's no longer going to be the case, because everyone else is just as working as hard as I am. Everyone else has really amazing talent. So oops, what do I do to now stand out? And then that really made me, that was probably one of the worst pressures I felt, because I was like, I'm stuck. I'm not equipped now to deal with this new situation. If I want to continue to excel at what I do, then the tools that have served me well so far are not really going to help me achieve the same goals going forward. So that was a big, big moment for me.
So when you have a realization like that, what did you do? I mean, how did you shift your understanding of your relationship with that sort of situation?
To be honest, at the time, I was quite stubborn, and I continued to do the same mold, work really hard, work even harder, work into the night every night, produce more reports, produce more charts. Did it serve me well? No, in the long run, absolutely not. It's one of those learning curves that I had to go through several years before I really actually understood this is really not serving me and you're not on the right path. And actually what I needed to do is actually really change environment, change the company, get new mentors, get new line managers who embrace that kind of part of me that wants to be the best at everything that I do, but teach me, mentor me into what else it is that I need to develop in order to continue to excel in what I want to do. And also actually accept that I don't need to excel at everything, that actually being good is good enough. But a big part of all of this is also just, really being kind to myself and understanding how willing I am without feeling that I need to prove it over and over again as well.
Yeah. And also what a great realization that you needed to change your environment. Yeah. I think to me, that is such an interesting part of this whole equation when talking about pressure, is the power of the environment on either raising it or reducing it. And often it's the last thing that someone realizes, that actually they want to work the way they're working, but they're just not in the right system, or they're not in the right environment in which to do it.
Yeah, so that's a big part of a lot of things. And I've been really lucky to come across some amazing managers and mentors in my life who really had with massive shifts that I can in particular now see as I look backwards in my career, have been such important figures in my life. And also something that defines me a lot is I'm very much a relationship person. I really enjoy making new connections, staying connected with people, learning about them. What are they all about? How did they navigate their careers themselves? And a lot of these people, even 20 years later, I'm still very much connected to them, and we check in on each other regularly. And it's such a beautiful thing as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of this sort of support network. And you're talking about a mentoring sort of like work support network. Are you? Is that how support networks play out for you most usefully?
Yeah, and it's not official, right? It's funny, isn't it? Because I would normally not think about articulating it that way. But absolutely, I completely strongly believe that we can all support each other much more. I always remember I had a friend telling me probably about 10 years ago now. She said, if a woman has something nice to say about another woman, she should say it. She should give that woman a compliment. And that has always stuck in my mind. And I think sometimes people think I'm a bit random, handing out compliments, without too much context. I love the dress you're wearing, or I love your hair today. And they're a bit like suspicious of where's this coming from. That kind of observation from my friend really stuck in my mind, that, why not uplift, if you have something good to say, you should say it, right? There's no harm in doing so. And it's so uplifting, and just being that support for each other is so important, particularly as you mentioned earlier around the challenges with the environment that we're currently living in. Is so important that we look out for each other and support each other as much as we can.
Yeah. I'm so intrigued with the various different environments that you're operating in a day, Edith. There's the home to get the kids out on time. Like so many people with children can relate to that. That's almost like the work day happens before you've even got, there's so much you achieve before you've even left the house. And then or if you're leaving the house, or, if you're going, or you're working from home, right? But even if you're working from home, how you separate that environment. I think some of the pressure's been exacerbated by the fact that everything is now in one house or one living environment, that the delineation between going from one to another, like you talked about journeys a lot in this conversation so far, even if it's just walking to the nursery, or whether it's driving, or it's picking up, whether it's delivering, it's almost like those forced moments of stopping and allowing yourself to just digest or integrate or switch off. And And it's funny, I had to go to London the other morning, and I just was walking across the bridge, and it was a beautiful day. And I just thought, gosh, this used to be a regular part of what I did. And I sort of miss it in a way.
Yeah, completely.
Just the sort of space of on my own, and appreciating that for what it was for that moment. And it made me think how much time I give myself to do that in this new way of working. Just these sort of open transition moments when you can walk and be with yourself.
Yeah, I can completely relate to that. Actually, the same happened to me when I went to the office in London the other day, and I'm lucky enough to be on the South Bank, and I decided to walk to the Tate Modern and back. And I don't know what got into me to even do that. I generally don't do that. I tend to stay at my desk and keep going. And I just reflected exactly the same thing. I looked up and I looked at the beautiful scenery. I was like, oh my goodness, this is what we used to have all the time, and now it's become such a special thing to embrace. But there's a balance again though as well, because I have so many things to do in a day, and what I started to do is use those micro moments where there is a break to maybe do something quickly that needs to be done. School needs a reply on this email, or I need to bring the washing upstairs, or I need to book an appointment for my son, whatever it might be. I use those micro moments to just tick things off the list, so it doesn't become like too much of a burden at the end of the day.
Yeah.
But then that would be at the detriment of those beautiful moments where you just take them 5 minutes to recharge. So it's about balancing the two of them, to not just continuously try to do something, but sometimes also allow yourself to just have a break and breathe, basically.
Yeah.
But I think for me at the moment, my kind of obsession, if you like, with the swimming or the gym, that's my moment to just do that as much as I can. Although I might listen to something whilst I'm running or whatever it might be, but then that's kind of my recharge time. But then if I have other moments in the day where I might have 5 minutes, I probably will need to do an email quickly or something, just to make sure that I am on top of everything, so that when we then reach that moment of the kids at home, that I then also am allowing myself to be fully present for them. So it's all a balance, and it's certainly not as straightforward as I make it sound. It's a constant battle to try and get it right.
Sure, and various different ingredients hit at different times, don't they? That influence the way you choose to respond.
Yeah.
Do you think, Edith, if we went to the principle of this podcast, do you think you are better under pressure?
Oh, this is a good one, right? Because I think to a certain extent I am. I can get very, very focused. So when I know the pressure is on, you've got that deadline looming, you need to get this done, I just go into this very special zone. And a lot of people pick up on that, and I just get it done. And I seem to find energy and commitment that I don't normally have as much on an average day, if you like. But it comes then back to that narrative of, if the pressure is unhealthy because it makes you go further than you need to go, or it makes you doubt yourself because you feel you're not good enough, then I don't think it serves me well. So I know you talked on your podcast before about that inner critical voice that we all have to a certain extent, and that's probably, it serves us, right? It has a purpose to help us, protect us from something, or to help us, whatever it might be. We all have that inner critical voice. It does have its role, but it also can be very negative in terms of the impact that it can have on us.
Yes.
And how we feel about things.
I had a fun conversation with Dr. Mandy Lita about this, how she's named her various different inner voices. And I definitely have, pessimistic Paula when she can come in. And there's something light and refreshing about being able to just recognize her. Do you have a similar set of singers in your head?
Yeah. That's a good one. Singers. I love that one. Yeah, no, after I listened to your podcast, I was like, right, what would I call mine? That was like my challenge, right? To come up with a name. So I think I came up with something like Not Good Enough Nora. I feel like, as that unexpected triplet, am I deserving to be here? I'm not good enough to be here. And so that Not Good Enough Nora has been serving that purpose to kind of prove to everyone that I'm deserving to be here, and I'm deserving to be more than just here. I'm actually, better than just good enough, you like. So that's kind of the inner critic. But then I thought, let me play with this a bit further. If kind of Not Good Enough Nora is my inner critic, what would be my hero look like? Like that alternative voice to that. What's the ideal voice that I want to have inside me? And so I came up with Risk It Rachel. So that's my alter ego person to Not Good Enough Nora.
Risk It Rachel.
Risk It Rachel. Yeah, Risk It Rachel.
Fab.
Not Good Enough Nora is always like kind of questioning whether I'm taking the right decisions, whether actually am I good enough to tackle this? Do I need to check in with someone just to get their opinion? Whereas Risk It Rachel, she's super confident. She's got this. She knows that she's way more qualified than she needs to be. She knows that she's got this amazing bag of experience and expertise, and she doesn't need to check in with anyone. She knows what she wants. So she just kind of goes for it. She owns it and she goes for it. She's super confident. I even created a folder on my work laptop that's called Risk It Rachel, where I put things in when I'm thinking about what I could do to really put myself out there a bit more.
God, I love that, Edith. I love it. I mean, I love the fact that you've set up a folder for it. How brilliant is that? It's like I had a client once who just had yay moments as a folder on her
I like that.
Or just a folder that's entitled me in capital letters. But this is lovely, and also it's such fun.
It is very fun, but it's also, I would say, a very worthwhile exercise for anyone to think about, what's my inner voice, what's my critical inner voice, and what would I like that voice to be for myself when I think about where I want to go in the future.
Have you got a folder for Not Good Enough Nora?
No, I'm not giving her. I'm not giving her any airspace more than she deserves.
No, she doesn't deserve her own folder. No. Quite right. This is great.
The episode that Edith is referring to is the episode where I was in conversation with Dr. Mandy Leto. Although I think I said Leto earlier. Please forgive me, Mandy. This was the episode in Series 5 where she introduced her inner critic, Judgy Janet, to mine, pessimistic Paula. Do give it a listen if that resonates. I love the fact that Edith has, yes, recognised Not Good Enough Nora, but has then created a counterbalance with Risk It Rachel. And not only that, Edith has a file open in Rachel's name, where she's collecting supporting evidence. This, of course, can only fuel Edith further. There are so many reasons to celebrate this. Under pressure, our energy is often wasted fighting or giving in to voices in our own head that don't back us. And when we realise that we can build our own cheerleader in response, we remind ourselves that we have choice, and also it's a lot more fun. There are two things Edith asked herself that encourage the creation of Risk It Rachel, and both I think are worth us all regularly asking, especially when those unhelpful voices take up residence in our heads. She asks, what if I played with this? She makes it a game, and I think that's really important to keep it light. And then she asks, what's the ideal voice that I actually want inside my head? This has made me ponder on what my own counterbalance to pessimistic Paula might be. I'm thinking, what if I could Wendy?
So Edith, if you, with all of, I mean, I love the range of things you shared there. What would you, if there was, again, if there were two things that you would pass forward to anyone listening to this, wishing to be better under pressure, what would be your first one?
Yeah, so I think the first one is certainly for me, it's about being kind just to yourself. I think we all have the ambition to some extent to want to push forward, to do better, to learn. And so we can be very self-critical because we always feel there's something else to do. There's always something else to reach. There's always not a promotion to chase. So that can put us in quite a critical mindset when we think about ourselves. So what I would encourage people to do is think about actually how far they've come. Just take a moment, pause and think about what have you achieved? How did you get where you are today? And you should be very proud of yourself in terms of getting there. And because we just too often forget to also look back and celebrate what we've done as well, as much as we also striving to continue our journey at the same time.
Yeah. And I think that's that whole kind, that you've given some very specific examples of what kind to yourself means. I think sometimes when it's just kind to yourself, it can sometimes feel indulgent for some people, like how do I do that? That's just a waste of time. But you've given some real specifics here about noticing how far you've come, just take a moment to look back, celebrate the fact that it's very much part of the sort of trophy cabinet of my way of thinking, to say, if we just keep going so fast through everything, we stop looking behind us in terms of our own achievements. And it also ties in with what you were saying earlier on around be kind to others. You know, if you see something that you are really enjoying, or it's lifted you, or it's made you smile, or you've really appreciated,
exactly.
why not offer it back?
Yeah, absolutely.
Especially if we're so bad at noticing them ourselves. It's nice to have people around us that actually saying, you know, when you did that, that was really good. That really helped me.
Yeah, no, completely agree. There's definitely something there in supporting each other, finding kind words for each other. As you said, it's easier to be kinder to others, isn't it, than to yourself as well. So there's certainly something. Yeah. And I think the other thing I would say as well is, and it made me reflect, coming back to the exercise, right? If you have a goal that you want to maybe swim a certain distance, which seems very unachievable today, you start with baby steps. You do a few, you might start with 20 minutes and then increase how long you swim, but you need to start somewhere, and it's little moments of putting your energy into that, but do it often and continue to do it, and then you will see bigger and bigger results. And it made me reflect on the business environment and career progression, and it's a similar idea there. It's, if you have big goals that you want to achieve, you need to start making little changes now, and they might seem very little, and they might seem like things that you just put to the side, but you have to start find those little moments where you start slowly do some shifts in how you do things, because otherwise that big goal that might be 3 or 5 years down the road, it might be just too big of a goal to achieve if you don't think about the little steps to help you to get there.
Yeah. What great idea. Do you have people in your team, Edith? Are there people that you're responsible for in terms of helping them with this sort of stuff?
My role is interesting in that we have a very senior but very flat structure. But what we do a lot is work with other agencies, for instance, who work with us on either long-term projects or what we call ad hoc projects. So that those are one-off projects that might take a few weeks to a few months. What we probably culturally do really well is work together as teams to understand our ambitions. We are very ambitious anyway, but then we work together to understand what the common goal is and how we can bring our strengths in to reach those goals. I also think within that context is something that I've really embraced is bring me solutions, not problems, is a massive thing for me that really shifted the way I think about achieving goals, working under pressure, whatever it might be. You can apply it to everything. We've had so many situations, myself working with a number of great people, trying to achieve a project that seemed extremely ambitious, if not impossible. But if you bring that attitude of, well, it's not going to work because of X, Y, and Z, you're not going to get it over the line. And what's incredibly important at that moment is to shift the mindset straight away to, okay, we've got some issues here, but what is the solutions that we're going to bring? Let's not bring problems to the table. We need to find something, a compromise that will help us to get this over the line. And it's served me so well over the years. Actually, there is always a way to achieve things. If they need to be achieved, there's always a way. Yeah. And you stop wasting time. But what is all these problems? No, let's just, and also it brings a positive can-do attitude to the whole situation as well. It's a very good statement to kind of remind myself pretty much every day, to be honest.
Yeah, and I'm also hearing in there that you find that has an immediate impact. If you're working with lots of external people or people that are like you, that must have an immediate impact on their ability to do the same.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
So what I'm also hearing here is that you're not, if they don't come with a solution or they're very sort of what I would call away from focused, you're modeling, putting them back into, so what can we do, or where can we go with this, which ultimately I'm hearing impacts them, and then they don't do so much of the away from and they start catching your going forward. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely correct. And also credit to all of these amazing people that I work with from a huge number of partner agencies that kind of work with me on a daily basis. They generally bring that attitude anyway. I think more and more in this kind of world that we live in, you have to bring that kind of mindset in terms of, things are tough. Budgets might be limited, but we still need to bring business results. How do we achieve them? And as I said as well, when you share it as a team, you share that burden, it's so much more achievable than if you find yourself by yourself, brainstorming with yourself. That's never a good starting point for any kind of project that's under high pressure. You need a team that brings different viewpoints, that brings different skills, but has the attitude of we can get it over the line regardless of what the challenge is.
Yeah. Fabulous. Edith, thank you so much for your thoughts, and what a great conversation.
No, thank you for having me. It's an absolute pleasure.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Better Under Pressure with me, Sara Milne Rowe. If you enjoyed it, please do subscribe and let us know what you found useful or what you'd like to know more about. And don't forget, if you'd like to sign up for our fortnightly Pressure Points newsletter, where I summarise key points from each conversation, you can find a link at saramilnerowe.com. If you're interested in any of the practices mentioned, check out my book, The Shed Method. Alternatively, you can find us at Coaching Impact or me on LinkedIn and Instagram. Better Under Pressure was produced by the fab team at Smart Cookie Media. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, goodbye.